Just a heads up, this episode deals with some pretty sensitive issues. So parents, before you listen with your kids, we ask that you listen first. Thanks so much.
Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Hello, Fortitude audience. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Heather Kittleson, and I am your host, and I am with my co-host, Amos Kittleson.
Hello, also known as husband.
And today we have Kuol in our studio with us. And recently, Kuol and I have become dear friends, and we share a lot of the same things in our spirit. And so I'm so honored to have your story with us today, Kuol. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Likewise, it's definitely a treasured space, and definitely love to connect with you guys as we share these moments and tell our stories.
Oh, thank you. And you are a storyteller, which is really fun. The way that we connected was we just had bumped into each other a few different times in the community, and both of us were like, we're supposed to meet.
Yes.
And the more that you were sharing your story with me, the more I realized that it needs to be told even bigger and broader. So hence the podcast. You're just kind of go into a little bit of who you are today and what you're doing for your career and all those things, and then we'll dig into your childhood.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. That's always an interesting question when someone is asked, is like, who you are. And I think when we think about life, your identity is sometimes shaped by the ones that care and the ones that bring you, like that rear you, and the ones that in your inner circles. So for me, currently right now, what I do is I am a founder and owner of Design Narratives. And essentially that career came about being in client acquisitions for 12 years. So customer service and human-centric approach has always been my forte, and just being around people. So with my consulting firm, what we do is teach organizations how to tell their stories, just like we're here. Sometimes when people have a uniqueness in their life, sometimes they just may not have the words to say them. And I think kind of got that gift to understand people through empathy. It's like, hey, what's your story? What are you about? What's your why? So that's what I do with my consulting firm. So,
which to me has a little bit of psychology to it, because I felt like when I was sitting with you, or just maybe like, I was like, you're like a therapist, man. Like, it was like, you would say words that I was thinking before they even came out of my mouth, or like just the way that you could articulate things. I was blown away. So it is definitely a gift of yours.
Thank you. And I think it was part of my childhood, and we'll get into the story in a little bit. But I think sometimes people understand others' emotions when they're able to just come with open arms. And I think our society kind of shaped us into being guarded and close. And then sometimes we miss the beautiful opportunities of connection. So,
yeah.
Yes.
And you definitely are empathetic.
Yeah. At least I try to be. At least that's what people tell me. Hopefully I have some emotions in there. So
what do we call it? An apath? What's the word?
You used the word empath.
Empath.
Yep.
Yeah.
I only know that from Star Trek.
Yeah.
Is that a real?
It's true.
Is that a word that's used
with
real human beings?
Yes. One of the things in my inner circles, one of the things that I had to learn is that even lacing emotional intelligence and receiving people in emotional level. Sometimes, like I said earlier, we're closed off, but being an empath, you're able to physically feel the people's emotion. And I think sometimes when somebody's feeling sadness, joy, and then people who are high in empath or have high empathy, they just feel it. And then sometimes the person doesn't have to explain. We just resonate with them in that space. And I think those are the human moments that connect us. So,
yeah.
Yes.
That is foreign. So beautiful.
It's foreign to me.
And I love this, that you just said, I used a word for you today that you were like, wow, that was a big word, Heather. Because it's usually the opposite. Like, that's actually a thing.
You had to pause for a moment.
Well, I knew exactly what you were conveying. And it was like, yeah, that totally makes sense. I just questioned whether or not it was a fictional, like a science fiction.
It was carrying a thesaurus with it. I was like, I don't know, Heather. Let's bring out the dictionary.
No, I will tell you, because there's this gentleman named Kuol who has told me that it is a thing.
It's a real thing.
Okay. So when we started talking about your story, my pen couldn't stop because it is so complex. So If we can go back a little bit to, you are a refugee from Sudan.
Yes.
And you were 10 years old. You were in fifth grade when you relocated over here to the United States.
Yes.
But there was so much that happened before that.
Yes.
So much. So can you tell us about your childhood?
Yes. Thank you for that question. I think when I think back before we arrived to the United States, we arrived in 1998. It's around winter time. So that was something that we were not prepared for. Going back a little bit, I was born in Khartoum, which is the capital of Sudan, before South Sudan got its independence. So in Khartoum, life was normal, just going to school as a kindergarten, and my dad was theologian. So one of the beautiful things about my childhood was that I stayed with my dad during school when he was teaching at the university. And then I think that's when I got introduced into the world of our Savior. And it was unique because during that school time, I go to school, go to kindergarten, and then the sisters of the universities babysit me after my dad is done teaching. And one of the things that my dad does is that he helps a lot of the community members receive care or resources. But that's a day that starts from 6 a.m. and ends at 9 p.m. And one of the things that was unique around the atmosphere is that the university was that I got to learn the aspect of community, the aspect of, how to connect with others, even as a kindergarten, because the sisters at the universities taught me all those things. And then during the summer, my mother owned a brewing company, so I get to go stay with her. So you can see the different dynamics of relationships that was kind of instilled in me as a childhood. And I think that kind of played a big part in my current personality, where I'm able to see the uniqueness of communities and integrate myself. But during my childhood, it was a lot of care it's like the communal care feeling. Basically, you don't feel like a person is foreign or that's a stranger, because everyone has that feeling of like, I care about this person because you're in proximity and you are loved. And that's one of the things that I truly miss in that human-centric approach when growing up. And in Sudan, that's one of the biggest things, is that there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of despair, and even through that darkness, and it's kind of serendipitous that we're kind of sitting in the dark because the power went out. But I think that just goes to the journey of, in life, we go through a lot of darkness. And in my childhood, one of the biggest things that we struggled with was the turmoil between being a Christian in an Islamic country. That was one of the biggest things that was it was hard, because I kind of see the stress and the turmoil in my dad's life, that he was still true to his faith, but he was always challenged every day for his faith. And I think that showed the fortitude, no pun intended, of my dad.
I'll take it.
Yes. Showing that, showing that he, through all those darkness and through all those challenges, that he still wants to show that we are loved, that we are taken care of. And even being a child, there's things that we weren't privy to, things that we didn't know. So we just live life that thinking everything's okay, and that hope is just on the horizon because we have someone that cares for us.
Sudan is, you alluded to this, Sudan is mostly Muslim?
So it's a mix of different races, but the prominent religion is Islam. So, and one of the biggest things is that with everyone living in Sudan, your faith can always be challenged, but Islam was and still is the fastest growing religion currently. And I think within that demographic of religion, that made it very hard for us to continue our faith. And that was one of the reasons why we migrated from Khartoum, which is the capital of Sudan. And in my childhood, it wasn't really, flowers and roses. It was a lot of turmoil. There was lots of dangers at any moment. We dealt with a lot of rebel groups, and one of the biggest things that we actually had to move and migrate from where my dad was at was because my dad was being persecuted because he was continuing to teach Christianity. And these are things that I wasn't really privy to until I got older, and I never knew why we migrated so much. So one of the biggest things is when my dad finally said that I don't think we're longer safe to stay in this country, in Khartoum, he decided to say, hey, we should probably move to Akoba. Akoba was the village that he was born. But because of transportation and lack of roads and all those things, making the journey, it's not like, hey, I want to go from my house to grandma's house. It was traveling across the country, walking thousands of miles just to arrive at safety or feel a belonging with your community. So when my dad decided that, hey, we are no longer safe in Khartoum, which was the capital of Sudan, and in that journey, there was other refugees that were making the same journey to safety and to hope. Because again, persecution, lack of resources, hunger, famine, and all the elemental things that happen and affect people's lives. And I think the beginning of the journey of us arriving to the United States was when my dad said, hey, we are no longer safe here. We should probably travel south of Sudan to see where our ancestors, where our heritage was and where he was from. And to make that journey, we traveled from Khartoum to Nairobi to Juba, and then Malakal, and all these countries in Sudan, you had to walk.
Yeah.
You had to take a bus, you had to take a boat. And for a 5-year-old, and I had my brother then.
Who was 2.5?
He was 2.5. Yeah. And during that journey, there was a lot of danger. There was a lot of unknowns. And I think through that journey, one of the things that opened my eyes was the first experience of trauma. And that trauma was when we were going to this country. I forgot the name of it, but it was actually a village. We had to take a boat, and this boat was a 3-day ride. But within this boat, there was a lot of rebel groups. There was a lot of soldiers. And, being a kid, I was just blissful. It was a ride. And that was the protection that a lot of kids and parents don't understand, or kids don't understand, that sometimes parents protect you from so much darkness. And once I got older and they told me the story, and, within this boat, we were traveling for 3 days, and, I was just exploring and walking around. And one of the things that just completely just made me pause and seeing the essence of life that can just be taken so fast. And when I was walking around this boat, there was just this smell, and I couldn't tell what it was. I didn't know it was maybe somebody was burning something and just walking around. And I was trying to find the smell, and I know the smell got stronger as I try to discover where it's at. And then as soon as I arrived to the source of the smell, it was in a dark room, and I was, curious. Kids always curious. They just beam to darkness. Mm-hmm. And there was a shed. It was a shed within this boat, and it was really dark, and I was curious, and I was like, okay, I really want to know what the smell is. And as I was walking slowly towards, and the smell kept getting stronger, and the smell kept getting stronger. And as soon as I got in there, it was just the aroma completely paralyzed me. And within this, there was a little bit of light that shone towards the back of the room. And it was right there that I understood that life isn't always as blissful as my parents had made it. And within this room, and the source of the smell, it was a young lady. And this young lady, she was crying. She had blisters. And at that time, I didn't know what language she spoke. I just knew that she looked like me. But her dialect, she spoke Arabic, and she couldn't really get the words to respond to me. And I kept asking, what's wrong? I was like, why are you crying? Kids always ask questions. Yeah. And as I got closer to her, the smell just kept getting stronger. And then as I got closer to her, I saw that parts of her skin was white and parts of her skin was peeling. And then I asked, what happened? And then some noise came in the back behind me and said, hey, don't go there. Don't go there. And this person just grabbed me by my shirt and just yanked me back and says, don't go in there. And I was like, what happened? And then, I just couldn't get that lady off my head. So then I had to ask, what happened to that lady? And then my mother at the time, she said that I don't want you to go in there because something really bad happened to this lady. And then I don't know if she was trying to minimize the story to save my feelings. Yeah. And she was just telling me that don't go there, and whatever you do, don't say these words, don't speak this language. And in Africa, there's over 136 different dialects. If you say the wrong dialect, that can either mean life or death. So when my mom was explaining to me, she said, don't speak this dialect, don't say anything. But that woman was tortured, and she was being tortured with fire, and she was being burned alive. That's what that smell was coming from. And right in that moment, I just started crying. It's why would someone do that? And then, it was day 2 of the journey. And then, started walking around again. The smell even till this day, I can still smell it in my head. And
that doesn't go away.
It does not go away. And then that was the start.
Yeah.
That was the start of the darkness and despair that through the journey, I thought it was supposed to be fun. It was supposed to be, you know, we're going to a place that is like a safe haven. Mm-hmm. But every step that we went has just been another lens of danger, another lens of feeling uncertain. And that was the start of it.
And that's stuff that your dad and your mom were trying to protect you from because they didn't want you to see the true evil of what other humans can do to other humans.
Yes.
On this journey, you said when you guys left because of the rebel groups and the things that you were seeing, as you and I were talking, I said, man, Kuol, I have only seen this in movies. You know, when you see the rebels go into villages and just rip apart families and just take lives. And it's very, it's like, I don't understand how someone can have that much darkness inside them that a human life means nothing to them. I have yet to really understand it other than the spiritual battle, right? And the evil is very powerful. Yeah. And so the things that you saw is uncomprehendable. Even you mentioned that your dad did get put in jail for like 6 months or something. And you saw he took his shirt off and he had lashes on his back.
Yeah. This was one of the villages that we arrived at. And this was after walking hundreds of miles. And there's always these checkpoints. And that's where these rebel groups are from. And when you get to these checkpoints, they either, one, take your belongings. They ask you questions. You speak the dialect. And this is where language is very important. If you don't speak the dialect, the entire group would either just be massacred right there. And luckily, my dad spoke Arabic and other languages to communicate safety, that we're not there to harm or we're not there to, because then there was a lot of civil war back then in South Sudan. And one of the things that was so prominent is that every step is like walking on eggshells. Like every day, you might not even wake up the next day. So within these checkpoints, these rebel groups basically ask you questions like, hey, where are you from? What do you have? What belongings do you have? And we had to stay in this village because we had to rest for several days just to gain some supplies. And within this village, there were several soldiers that came by and they were like, asking my dad and interrogating questions. And one of the things that I still hold true to my dad and why I look up to him is that when he was being questioned, he was asked like, what religion do you practice? What are you doing? And then my dad had one gathering at this village and he had a group of people praying together for the journey and for safety. And the rebel groups came and took him and started questioning, interrogating him. And when that happened, he was gone for a while and we didn't know what was happening to him. And within this journey, we were taken care of. And that's where that concept of communal care, why we felt like nothing was missing because we were still taken care of. Yeah. We were kind of given blindfolds to what's really happening. And when my dad came back to us and, we prayed and we were joyous, but my dad was sitting down majority of the time and his shirt was just bleeding. And we were like, Dad, what's wrong? And he's like, no, it's just the floor. And, being kids, we're just, oh, okay, you give us one quick answer and then we're okay. Right. And then, my dad was in bandages and he was just sitting in this room like majority of the time. And there's some people coming in the rooms. And this was like in a house. It wasn't like a house. It was, the village was mostly made. Yeah. So it was huts and all that. But in this room that he was sitting in, people came and visited him. People came and did all these things. But my dad was saving us from seeing his scars. Yeah. And we asked him, it's like, Dad, where are these from? And then he finally told us like, this was because they were questioning my faith.
And he stayed true.
And he stayed true.
That is happening all over our world right now, where people are being persecuted left and right for their faith, and they're not backing down because we have the promise of eternity. Yeah. And so I can't even imagine the battle that your dad was feeling in that moment of, I don't want to leave my boy, my family, but if it comes to it, they're being taken care of by others, which is, we talked about your uncles and your extended family and all the people who just wrap their arms around you guys as kids. And because you never know when someone might get taken from you.
Yes.
This journey, your mom also passed when you were 5. So your mom was not on this journey with you, correct?
No. My mom passed away when I was 5. And then, due to my dad knowing that he needs somebody to care for us. Yeah. So my dad remarried to my stepmom, beautiful lady. And one of the principles I learned about integrity and responsibility came from her.
Yeah.
And she's the one that made that journey with us. And one of the things that was beautiful is that she spoke a language that was probably saved us a couple of times. And she's very strong-willed, and she taught me a lot of principles about being responsible, by taking care of those people around you. So,
Man.
Yeah.
Well, I am really grateful that you made it through the journey.
Thank you.
To be sitting here with us today. And your dad is no longer here either, correct?
No, my dad passed away. Yeah, he's passed away in 2021. It was his heart. He had a very weak heart, and I think COVID just kind of made it a little bit harder.
Yeah.
What year did you make it? What year did you make it here?
1998.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we got to be here for 3 years.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
No. Do you say 3 years? 98 to
98.
21.
No.
I can do math good.
No, he passed away 2020. Actually, no. Yes, 2021 he passed away. And yeah, when we came here in 1998, it was my stepmother, my brother Dew, younger sister Paul, and then myself.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There was just 20 years you missed. It's okay.
That's fine.
Because it was 01.
Yeah, 01, and
right.
he just skipped the whole timeline. It's fine.
So, did you have any more questions about that? There's so many things in your childhood that we could touch on, but those are some pretty unique.
I was on a walk with my little girls, my two youngest, just this last weekend, and it was it's like a 3-mile loop around a lake, and our youngest is 5, and we were probably a mile and a half in, and we could have gone another mile or 2 miles around, and I made the conscious decision that we'll just turn around and go back the way we came, you know. And my empathy was going towards her as just short little legs, and I think about the journey that you took, and in the context of they're capable of doing so much more than we think they can, right? Like she could have made it around, and it would have maybe been kind of hard. Yeah. But do you have any memories of long walks that you were just exhausted, or you couldn't go any farther, and what your parents did to encourage you? So
my younger brother, Dew, he was about 3. So my dad carried him. And again, children have weak legs. They can't go for long, and, they walk for maybe a few hours. Mm-hmm. But what my dad did is he carried my brother on his back. Mm-hmm. And as you can see, the strain and fatigue that kicks in when you're carrying, no matter how small a person is, but as you carry them, there was just so much danger in the walks. There's thorns. And one of the things that I remember from the walk, being a 5-year-old, I walked all those journeys, but it was laced with excitement because we're going somewhere. It's like a journey and to a place that's unknown, but it's just exciting. So that was that euphoria. But my brother, physically, he couldn't do it. But I think walking as a 5-year-old and making that journey is like the equivalent of having your children walk from here to probably Oklahoma. On foot. On a daily, and over time. Over time. Yeah. And this journey took several months. Mm-hmm. And it was just filled with dangers. And one of the things that I was not prepared for is like when you gather in a campfire, one of the things that you also have to watch out for is Mother Nature. Yeah. And that includes hyenas, lions, and all the things. And one of the things that I still remember is that it was probably over 100 of us, but I think only about 50 of us made it in the journey. Because of wild animals. Wild animals, sickness, just people couldn't make the journey, other influences from other people. And you just never know if you're going to survive the next day. Yeah. This is incomprehensible to me as a dad. If on this journey the other day, we stopped and there were some horses that came up to a fence against us, and we're just kind of touching this horse. Yeah. And that in itself was nervous. Like, we don't know this horse. We don't know what it's capable of doing. Yeah. And that was a nervous moment for me. And so just being the protective dad, no less. Yeah. I have to sleep, and there's wild animals, and I have to get up and I have to lead my family the next day. Yeah. Has your dad ever talked about that? Yep. Our dad, and that's the crazy thing is, like, our dad said, like, when you guys are sleeping, there's a rotation of night watchers. Yeah. And our dad was just saying, be careful, stay close. And you pinpoint your caretakers within this journey. So it was like a systematic journey. Like, you know who to go to if you're lost. Yeah. If you are left behind, there's a rest point, and then there's a person who would run and give a message to people who are walking a little bit faster. So there was a system, but even within that system, there's still elements of nature that can still impact it. That was one of the most beautiful thing about the journey. And imagine us planning a trip. Let's say we're going to the hills and, in South Dakota here. One of the things is you feel that you have a plan, and within this plan, everything has an itinerary. But back then, the itinerary is mixed with different people, different tribes, different languages. And if one error of the communication, that means life or death for several people.
Man.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn there. So much we could learn on how to do life today because of that.
Yeah.
Communication.
Yes.
That's, to me, one thing. It's like communication. Why can't we just have a conversation and just be real?
Yeah.
And think about that. You don't have just one or two dads or leaders within that pack. You have a lot of personalities, a lot of people who think they're right, and all the one common goal is survival and protection of their family.
Yep.
So you have to back down, humble yourself, and just get there however you have to get there.
Yep.
I wish more people had that concept.
Yep. And at the end of the day, we have a common goal, but sometimes we can get to it differently. But you have to have that strategic plan and say, look, here's how we're going to get there. Here's what we want, but let's work together within our strengths to do that. And I think that's one of the cultures that keeps communities strong, is that you get to lean on each other and call each other when your accountability is in question.
And love.
Yes.
Like the one thing that you have mentioned to me several times in our conversations has been the common theme was that it was about love.
Yep.
Every beat of it.
Yeah. Because love does not discriminate. It doesn't judge. You can try to manipulate it, but at the end of the day, you still have to return to the original source of what it means. Yeah.
So I remember saying to you, I'm like, I just can't wait to meet your dad and dad in heaven. Oh,
He will tell you stories. He probably make fun of me, but it's all right.
What a man, though.
Yes.
I love your dad. And
yes.
I thank you for sharing him through your story.
Yes.
I want to walk into the refugee side of things, because you got here when you were 10 years old.
Yep.
And it was not only your dad and your stepmother.
It was my brother Dew and his younger sister Nepal, who was I think just about to turn 2.
Okay.
Yep.
So where was the first place you guys moved to?
New York. That was a brisk, cold, and right before we arrived, and going through refugee camps and telling us about America and where you're going, they painted a picture that when we arrive, it'll be golden and sunny and blonde hair and blue eyes, and it was like angelic arrival. But when you arrive in the airport, it was cold and lots of people walking back and forth, and I was taken back a little. I was like, these people, there's so much people, but there's no smiles. People are just passing by. There was no connection. Yeah. Even if you're in close proximity, there was no connection. People didn't. You think you see somebody, but they don't see each other. They don't acknowledge, and that kind of broke my heart, because the picture and the image I had in my head is like you get seen, you arrive, and there's joy, but
welcome,
welcome, and nope, they were told like go sit over there, and we were told, and that was the first time I saw an escalator, and it was quite unique. And we were told to sit next to this escalator, and it was a cold floor, and there was maybe about like 30 or 40 of us. And then the program that we came through, the person just came by and just gave us cash. And then I was like, okay, I didn't understand what's going on.
Right.
And I was like, okay. And then we were told, hey, go here. And then there was a sign, and then you follow it. It just felt like it was a programmed approach of connection. Like there was no authenticity of like a warm person feeling in your presence. It's like, nope, you're a number now. You're a number. And if I go back to that human-centric approach, being made feel like a number was something I never want to give to anybody. And I think that's probably encouraged my personality. It's like, I don't want someone to just feel like they're just a number. Yeah.
That's great. Do you remember what time of year you flew in?
It was September.
Yeah, that's cold.
Yeah.
If only you'd flown into Sioux Falls, you would have got that warm welcome.
Yes, yeah.
The
Midwest nice.
And then the freezing cold outside.
Yeah. New York it was cold, and it was like, actually, no, it was right. It was end of September. So like we stayed there for like 2-3 days. So it was like, beginning right of October.
And where did you fly from? To New York?
From London. So we had to travel from Ethiopia to London, from London to here. And it was a 24-hour journey, and I was awake that entire time.
Wow. That's a 5-year-old.
Yes.
Because the journey, you were excited.
Yeah, I was excited and I was awake.
You made it.
Yeah, and made it.
Amazing.
And silly thing, just a added note, the first American food, I don't know if it was American or not, but it was jelly. It was in the plane.
Jelly.
Yeah.
In the little container.
I was like,
First American.
I couldn't describe.
Very American
yeah,
too.
Yeah. And
Very
I couldn't describe the textures. Like I can feel it, but I couldn't really feel it. And it was just like, it's like, I don't know what this is, but it's sweet. So it was quite interesting.
Are there still people making a very similar journey today?
Yes, similar journey, but not in the essence that, the world developed and the country looks different after almost 25 or 30 years.
Yeah.
But the journey is different. It's a lot easier, but the turmoil is still there.
Is there still people sleeping outside with wild
wild animals? And that's the different parts of the villages. There's parts that are developed and some parts that are just still the same.
Yeah.
There's access to certain resources, but because Africa being called a dark country, it's not as harsh as it was, but it's not as easy living as people may think.
So if you see someone in the airport, you don't know what their story is. It's easy to judge.
Yeah.
But remember the story.
Yeah.
Remember this. They may have gone through some stuff.
Yeah.
So have some empathy.
Yeah.
Pass on some patience, some love, some caring, compassion.
Yeah.
Think about you were just walked for months.
Yeah.
Months to get to safety.
And here someone's like, their Uber was late.
Yeah.
And now they're upset. Come on.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out, because that's something I kept thinking about as you were just talking about how you arrive. And it's like not a single smile, not a welcome.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter where you're at in life. It doesn't matter if you're pumping your gas.
Yeah.
Just say, hey,
Yeah.
like,
hello, how are you?
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people, I always chuckle when people always use the weather as a beginning thing. Like, wow, today sure is rainy. Yeah. Straight in the obvious. But they're just trying to strike up a conversation with you. Yeah. So engage.
Yeah. And one of the hardest things that I always find out about engagement is that sometimes we overthink the human connection. We are wired and designed to connect. But I think sometimes we put so many barriers and parameters and expectations like, well, what if you don't like me? What if this happens? What if we don't speak the same language? But I think when we think about the human connection and human-centered approach to things, we just overcomplicate things.
Yes, we do.
We're over it. It's just like, just wave. And if you don't want to say hello back, that's fine. At least I did my part in our connection.
Universal smile, man.
Yeah.
Just the smile and the look in the eye.
Yeah.
Like, I see you.
Yeah, I see it, and that's it. But life has evolved us into so many different things because of all the turmoil and despair and all the narratives and all the things that happen. But I think at the end of the day, we're just longing for a connection. I think COVID kind of hit that reset button to say people need to check in internally and then check in with the externals as well.
Yeah. They sure do.
Yeah.
So New York, but here we are in South Dakota.
Yeah.
So how did you end up, you're in the U.S.
Yeah.
Did you take another journey?
Yeah. So after New York, after New York, it was Buffalo, New York, from Buffalo to Minnesota to Otana, we probably lived in like 22 different states. And one of the reasons was because that communal care and my dad's role then was to connect a lot of the refugee families to resources. So we moved a lot and I didn't know why. So every grade I've been to has been a different state or a different location or even a different country. Okay. But yeah, that was
22 states.
Yeah.
I've lived here my entire life.
Yeah. And Midwest was because of school.
No, we're close to 22.
Yeah. No, we chose Midwest because of school. And again, like this phrase we say, the Midwest nice. And when I talked about, people saying hello to each other, South Dakota was the first place that someone actually acknowledged and actually checked in with you. But from there, just, started my career and there's a lot of connections and a lot of mentors and just decided, to either raise a family here or just build my career here. So, yeah.
Wow. But you're doing both.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
When you talk about the process of the refugee and just anybody, there's so many languages. Oh man, like languages, and I don't even know the number. I think that there probably is
languages in Sioux Falls.
Well, just in
more than one.
Yeah.
More than one. There's about probably over maybe 93 different languages and different communities and refugees that live here.
So in the nation, let's go there. Do you think that the U.S. is doing a good job?
The U.S. is doing a good job in receiving, but there's a lot of external influences. And even now, people who moved here and been here for almost 20 to 30 years who are refugees are wanting to either go back or bring their family here.
Yeah.
But the United States is doing a good job in certain things. But I think what makes being a refugee difficult is that those barriers, those challenges, and those determinants to social living. But we're educating ourselves on how to receive.
Okay.
And how to receive people.
How can we do? Because there's a lot of I don't want to say stereotype the right word, but just there's a lot of things that we, like I just said, when you and I were talking, like, Kuol, I've only seen this stuff in the movies. Like you've physically, spiritually, and like you emotionally, you experienced this firsthand. You've seen some of the toughest things. Yeah. And so I, as a little kid, I dreamt about having friends like you. Yeah. Because I wanted to just, I'm like, this isn't just in the movies. No. This is real. Yeah. So how can we do better in the engagement, in the communal side of things? It's like, how can we operate, and not systematically, but just how can we engage better?
And that's important question. And this is the part where people will tell me, Kuol, you're such a people person. How do you connect with everyone? And I think that connection just comes down to saying, I don't know what your story is, but I'm here to listen. Yeah. And a lot of times that's one of the things that we don't do as a society is listen. We assume what another person needs before we ask. And I think that's where the empathy is like, you can try to understand what that person's story is. But at the end of the day, we try to solve problems before we even know what the problem is. So sometimes just saying, hey, I don't know, teach me or ask me. That's usually the first step. Curiosity.
Yeah. Just be curious.
Yeah.
Seek first. Seek first to understand.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I've learned that one the hard way in our marriage. Yeah. Seek first to understand.
Yeah.
Wow. So what are some of the things, because your children are not experiencing the same sort of things, but from a Christian perspective and the things that you have taken from the beautiful examples that your father has left you, how are you leading your kiddos?
For me, it's always seeking guidance and then saying, I don't know, and then growing with your partner. And one of the most beautiful things about, family dynamics is that you have to hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
And one of the things that goes into social determinants of challenges in life is that when your inner circle of your support system of your family fails, that's when we start to lead into darkness. And something that I've learned as a leader and from my father is that, family is everything, but make sure that you hold yourself accountable and be true to the ones you love. And then if you don't know, ask for help. And I think for somebody like me, who always been a self-taught person, I don't like asking for help because it makes me seem not necessarily weak, but it feels like I'm not capable of doing something by asking for help. But the biggest growth I've ever had was asking for help. And asking for help when I need it, and then asking for help when I don't need it either. And what that means is you bring people in your circle so you grow together. And that's one of the things that I learned as being, raising a family and just asking for help. Sometimes we forget that, but our society has made us to not ask for help. Mm-hmm. But I think that's where my growing point is. It's just learning to ask for help.
That's really good. What do you got?
I wonder if you can help encourage us and help us form our thoughts on the current state of immigration in the United States with the context of the southern border and a little bit of the northern border too. I think, and I have empathy towards the tough situation that those people are going through. Mm-hmm. And it's a complex, very difficult thing to think about, and then to form a decision. And there are very many strong opinions on this. Yeah. From your perspective, how can you form our thinking about this? I'm not asking for your opinion. Mm-hmm. How can we think about this?
Well, I'm not an expert in immigration or anything like that. But on the topics of feeling the experience of wanting to be somewhere because of security and to feel safe just for your family, one of the things that I feel that's important to start thinking about is the why behind it. Once you understand the why, then it's easier to make things a lot easier to have an understanding of what you can do. But what happens is that like, well, we can't do it because of this, and that. We always find the reasons why we can't do something. But the perspective of immigration and people wanting to come to a different country or migrate for safety is lots of reasons. One for new life, safety, and a lot of immigrants come here for different reasons. But majority of them come for a better life. And when we understand that concept, hey, some people just want a better life, then how can we make that better? And I think in life and when we're born, one of the biggest goals I feel is that to reduce the suffering of others. But we kind of tend to have society and systematic things that put a challenge in and a stipend to those things. So to go back to your question of how can we start thinking about those things, is just understanding why people want to be somewhere safe. It's just in our ability and our innate need to survive. So if you start thinking about that, we can remove the political lens, social determinants and all those things. But if you really want to think about immigration, just see why are those people moving? And I think that's where that conversation can start there.
Yeah.
Can I add to that for a second?
Yeah.
The thing for me is I look at every single person as a child of God. I don't see immigrant and I don't see you're from here and you're from there and you're from this. It's like we are all children of God, and we're in a messed up world that is completely in bondage in so many ways. So it's like if we could just strip off those labels and colors and all the things and just look at each other, man, you are a child of God. Like that makes everything different. Everything. Because we all have the same needs. We all have the same, like different wants. But the need for survival, food.
All the necessities.
Safety. Yeah. That's the lens that I try to look through. I don't do it perfect every day, but well, one last thing that from everything that you're saying and all the conversations that we have had, the one lesson that I have learned from you is the communal piece of it. Is like just communal care. Like if we could all strive to really love your neighbor, and we could all really strive to be there for one another and seek to understand, hear their stories out, and take care of one another, regardless if they're your flesh and blood, right? Like if we don't share the same DNA earthly, we share the same DNA in heaven. And so it's a incredible lesson that you have taught me and reminded me of. So thank you very, very much for being here and sharing your story, Kuol.
Thank you for having me in this space and sharing in story time with you guys. And I should thank you for sharing your guys' heart and space. And I think a lot of times when people want to connect, and just last piece for me is that through storytelling, I think we can start to heal the human connection. It's just hearing each other's story.
Amen, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for listening. We want to change lives through this podcast. And if you want to support this podcast or our guests, please see the links below for our Patreon and giving links.
And like and subscribe, and also share our podcast as much as possible. Thank you.